Hey there, I'm Eric Hunley and welcome to the channel. On this channel, I like to explore human behavior, if you will, of all kinds, everything from body language to statement analysis to, well, a little bit of true crime. Sometimes, though, we run into things where culture and behavior collide with each other. And today I have an amazing guest who does something that, or has done something that is unique to Hollywood, I guess, as an industry, or to the stars, to whatever. He is a field producer, or was a field producer for TMZ. His name is Jesse Rowe. How are you doing today, Jesse?
Good, Eric. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I think it's really cool having you on because we got to see Morgan Tremaine testify in court. Now, everybody was super excited about his testimony because it implied extremely strongly that some source material came from Amber Heard directly, and it was a deliberate leak. But what I found more interesting was that TMZ sent a lawyer in ahead of time to try to keep Morgan Tremaine off the stand. And on the stand, Morgan Tremaine kind of described a process of how footage is gained for TMZ. And I came to find you're the other side of the process, which is amazing.
Ms. Heard was filing a restraining order at a courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. So I dispatched camera people to that location.
When Morgan refers to a camera guy that he dispatched to the courthouse that day to film Amber Heard with the bruise on her face, that was me. That was I was the field reporter that day that was sent because I primarily did court cases and live streams and press conferences for TMZ. So that was at the time when I worked there, that was my primary job. That was my primary role, was like field assignment expert, if you will, for the field producer operation.
Okay, now to get it out of the way, because everybody's going to go, so you were the paparazzi? How do you feel about that term? Is it a proper term, or are there differences in what you're doing?
In the early days, like in the first, 5-6 years of TMZ, they would hire paparazzi to become part of their field operation. But they sort of shifted to where they wanted just to have people who could have conversations behind cameras and people who understood reporting, understood news gathering, understood sourcing, things like that. We were very much just interview people who are okay with talking to you, and where you have a character behind the camera asking interesting questions that they can sort of like market and make fun of in the office and joke about for the TV show, but then also get really good sound bites for a news angle for the website.
I think you were even Emmy nominated, right?
I think I stepped on it or something. I didn't have it in a frame, so that's how much it's done for me. But yeah, it was Emmy nominated back in 2016. I went to the daytime Emmys with the whole TMZ crew. It was cool. So I am Emmy nominated as a field producer for TMZ.
Awesome. Now, okay, so how do you get into being a field producer? It seems like a unique field.
So I was, at the time when I was 22 years old, this was like 13 years ago, I was playing online poker. I wanted to become a professional poker player. And like during the poker boom, I got really into it. But I slowly realized that hustle and grind of being a poker player just I wasn't cut out for it. And but I had always had an interest in journalism. I did take classes in college for journalism. I did go to film school classes, things like that. So a friend of mine knew that I needed a job, and he recommended TMZ to me. And I wasn't, I didn't know what they were really. I had some reservations about, like you said, like the term paparazzi and that sort of field. But I just basically needed a job, to be honest. So I sent my resume through an AOL instant message to this is way back to the lady running the field operation at the time, and she got back to me within 2 days, and I had an interview, and I just assumed I was going to be working there for a couple months, but I passed the trial period. They really liked me, and then here I am 13 years later. I had over a decade of experience, and I never in a million years imagined I'd be doing this job, but that's just the way it worked out.
Okay, to go into this particular story, which is, of course, the famous Bruise video, what happened that day? Can we go through it?
Obviously, there are like some things that I can't say, but
Sure.
so like I said before, I was basically the guy that was on the camera crew who was specifically requested for court assignments and live streams and press conferences. That was sort of my specialty. Like the cameras that we saw in the Johnny and Amber trial, I would go into courtrooms and I would request access to film a court hearing, right? So they sent me, I was told to go to Stanley Mosque which is a courthouse in Los Angeles, because there was a rumor spreading that Amber Heard had a bruise on her face and was filing a restraining order against Johnny Depp. And so, of course, I rushed over there like at noon or something. And at first, I was going to try to get footage inside the courtroom because we had a media request and everything. But generally, with domestic or alleged domestic violence, courts don't approve that sort of thing because it's personal. It is your rights as a public figure are still protected when it comes to civil and domestic matters, right? So I was not approved to film inside the courtroom, but as I go outside, I noticed that there were 30 or 40 other news cameras had showed up in the time that I was inside. To coming back outside, and I just realized, okay, it's spreading like wildfire now. Everybody knows.
Is that unusual, that number?
Media members will tip each other off and let each other know that something is happening. However, I can promise you that that was not the case from my side, because I went there fully expecting that I was exclusive, quote unquote, which is that I was the only one, right? And I slowly figured out that was not the case. So it's unusual the way it happened, because this was like a last minute thing that just like popped up on the radar, which leads you to assume that somebody was leaking it to the media, or that the media was exchanging information within themselves. So,
right. Well, and the most significant part was you stated a bruise. You had knowledge ahead of time that there was a bruise on one side of her face or the other?
You guys are welcome to make whatever judgments you want. I have no idea where the information came from. I can speculate, I can guess, right? But I was told by the people sending me that supposedly there was a bruise, which implies that somebody had either seen her face or somebody was letting know there was a bruise, right? So
that was Morgan, though, right? I mean, he was your boss.
Well, yeah, right. Morgan was the one who called me and said supposedly there is a bruise on her face.
And I think he testified to it, so it's not. It's out there. He's testified.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
So yeah, Morgan let me know that there was a bruise on her face and that I should be prepared to stand on the right side of her when she exits the courthouse.
Okay, and again, though, is that normal?
It's not normal for this sort of situation, just because it is a court hearing, and where supposedly there's private information being revealed within a filing a restraining order hearing. That's not normal for us to have that information before a person goes into court.
Now, and I wanted to point this out because from what I've researched watching your videos and things, this was your beat. You did court cases, so for it to be unusual for you, that means that in general, it's pretty unusual, since that was the majority of what you did. I'm guessing that a Gloria Allred or somebody from her office might call you if she had a case coming up, or Morgan or whomever.
Me personally, I had relationships with a bunch of lawyers. So yeah, I know these lawyers very well, and it isn't uncommon for them to leak information so that the press is prepared to look for something because they want to manipulate it. It's unusual that for something like this, for domestic violence, just because, or alleged domestic violence, just because that is so personal, that would imply that the person with the bruise on their face has to be a willing participant in letting the media know this information. Where sometimes lawyers don't always let their clients know. Sometimes they like to just handle things themselves, whereas they walked Amber Heard right out there, with a bruise on her face. So I think it was pretty clear from my standpoint that she was okay with it, which is kind of unusual.
Okay, and I would say, and I'm not criticizing it, but Gloria Allred, Mark Garros, friends with Robert Barnes, who used to be in the LA area and represented Wesley Snipes. He's a big believer in trying cases in the court of public opinion. So you, right, as a journalist, would serve their purpose in getting their argument out to the court of public opinion.
Because I think I got a lot of comments like that on my video from people saying, "Oh, so you deliberately helped Amber, get her win her case," because I was there filming it. And from my standpoint, it's no, because I was a reporter who was given information that there's a bruise on a famous actress's face. I know people don't like to call her a famous actress, but on a famous person's face, and I was just doing my job as a reporter. And I do think, though, that there is an element of where lawyers or representation like publicists will manipulate the press and use them, almost like weaponize the press in a way where
sure,
they can get their narrative across the way they want to. And I'd be lying if I didn't admit that, yes, sometimes I would go and film somebody and do a little puff piece interview. But when it was something like this, you always, as a reporter, you always have to, you take the allegations seriously, but you also remain skeptical, just on the terms of, you have to also, there are rights to the other person. There's another side to this, and the person who is being accused has rights the same way the person making the accusations has rights, right? So as a member of the press, if you're not taking that sort of a straight down the middle neutral approach, then you're doing a disservice. And that was kind of the way that I looked at it. But you're right. Lawyers will use the press, and publicists will use the press for manipulation all the time.
And by the way, I'm not criticizing you. It's news. What are you supposed to say? Oh, well, this isn't relevant news to me. I'm high-minded. This is not my story. I've had Carol Baskin on my show, for example, right? Fantastic guest. Very interesting interview. I want to hear from her. And sure, of course you're going to go. There's a big event happening. You're going to take footage of it. That's not, you didn't drive the event. You didn't create the event. You didn't write the event. You didn't do anything except record the event and share what you saw.
For people watching, I didn't write articles. I would just submit the information, right, that I found. So yeah, I would submit video, but also I would gather information on the scene, right? And I would submit that all, and then it's sort of up to the reporters and the producers to dissect and analyze and source it and determine what's what, right? What's real and what's not. But sometimes, I got sent on interviews with people that I didn't respect, I didn't like. They were politicians that I wasn't a fan of. But I go and I interview them and I ask them tough questions and I give them a chance to answer. You have to be neutral if you're doing this job, because otherwise you're doing the public a disservice you're automatically you're automatically trying to convince people watching the video of one thing before you even let the other person, the person that you're filming, give their side of the story. So
are you trying to sublimate your identity? Literally you're just an extension of your camera? And I'm not trying to say that's bad. That's actually extremely neutral. Sort of taking yourself out of it.
My job was unique, right? Because most reporter jobs has the news camera guy, and then there's a reporter on camera, like a guy doing the interviews, right? Like an on-screen talent. Sure. Whereas I was the camera guy and the talent at the same time, right? So, I would never go up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Jesse with TMZ. How are you?" It would just be, "Hey, I'm with TMZ. Can I ask you a question?"
Right.
You're correct. I was just part of the mechanism. I was just a cog in the machine, essentially.
And to further speculate on that note, because I am speculating now, I can imagine that even half of your questions you might ask them could be on the cutting room floor. a question you ask needs to be in there in order to make their statement make sense, if it's that kind of question. But other times they may just want to take their statements, boom, 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 and your questions that inspired them may be gone. They're not even necessary all the time.
Correct. I would go into some interviews with like 5 prepared questions, just like, because these are what I'm, this is what I know is the top story. This is what I know this is the public information that's out there. But sometimes you just ask the first question and the answer would be so interesting that you would just throw away all the other questions and you just follow up with what they said because you realized, oh, there it is. That's the headline. I'm going to follow that now. But there's also times where you ask a bunch of questions and it's like a 5-minute interview and then they'll only use 1 minute of it because 4 minutes of it is just the person repeating the same answer over and over again. The question doesn't elicit any sort of newsworthy response. And so just to save for time, you'll cut certain parts out.
Now, on that note, this is where I get interesting because I love the craft of it, right? Do you, for example, when I go into interviews, and I don't know the person, obviously, but I want to get a good interview. And it's somebody I know who has been interviewed hundreds of times, okay? They've had every question. I always try to come up with an angle or a question or something that'll get their attention, if that makes sense.
Yes. I would say that's kind of the whole game. In a very general way of putting it, this is something I was told a lot. Think about the headline with the question that you're asking, right? Like if you're asking a question, what is the purpose of the question? Like, what's the ultimate goal? Is try to come up with a headline like for clickbait, right? That is going to be something that people are interested in, but is still newsworthy, and that was kind of the art of the craft, is asking a question that will get the response that makes news, that goes viral, that gets clicks, however you want to put it. And sometimes that was hard. I mean, sometimes you could ask a great question and they wouldn't answer it right, the way you wanted to. And then you're like kind of back to square one and you have to think on the fly a little bit. And that was the hard part of the job. And sometimes you're just at court and or covering some other assignment, and somebody will walk out that's part of another news story, and you have 20 seconds to think of something. And I can't tell you how many times I did like a 15-second Google search of somebody as they're like walking out of a courthouse. What are they at court for? And then I have 15 seconds to figure it out. So that was one of the tough parts of the job.
Well, and it had to get better over time because if you were there for 13 years, and that means iPhones didn't really come into prevalence. I know it was 2007, but, searching online for the information really quickly, I'd say it's a 2009, 10 and beyond versus you might have in your first couple of years been going, oh, shit.
Yeah. I had a BlackBerry for work the first few years, and that was like typing on the browser in the BlackBerry was always fun. No, but what we did have was we had like a walkie-talkie system with some of the field reporters, so that like, hey guys, I'm on an assignment here. I know that Britney Spears is in the news. Like, what do you guys suggest? And then you would have like some of the other camera guys chime in and try to help you out. So we did have a support system where you could figure it out. But yeah, like once iPhones became more easily researched and available, then all of a sudden Google's your best friend, and it made the job a lot easier. But yeah, you're right. The first 3 years, it was probably it was a little bit more of a grind. It was just looking at the news and figuring it out.
Which I would actually argue sometimes it's not a fault, it's a feature. Like, you're probably better at your job in some ways because you had to suffer through that and could see what the shortcut would be because of that. It's kind of like music engineers who had to actually cut tape. They have high level skills in working with that because they can think all the way to the analog.
It's possible that I wouldn't have lasted as long as I did had I not been with TMZ in those first few years when it was tougher to research things, because it's possible that like I went to like the school of hard knocks, as they like to say. I think maybe I had some trial and error that other camera guys or girls didn't have.
Okay, now to circle all the way back around to the day with Amber Heard, you did a nice breakdown video showing, again, another aspect of her leaving the courthouse and the events being unusual. And I was wondering if you could show us here how things worked with the Stanley Mosque courthouse and whether she actually did pick the only place she could have exited. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You have to.
Okay, so this is the Stanley Mosque courthouse. This is downtown LA. And basically you have a whole series of courthouses, right? You have like City Hall, you have the Grand Jury, you have the Hall of Justice, you have the federal courthouse right here. In terms of Amber, so in the video I described that right up here, if you can see my mouse, this is Grand Avenue, right? And this is the exit that Amber Heard used when she left the courthouse.
Okay.
So this is on the 4th floor of the building, and then you have a decline right here on First Street that goes down to Hill Street, which is the first floor exit of the building, right over here.
Okay.
So those are the two main entrances, right? So Hill Street and Grand Avenue. Then there's another entrance and exit right here on First Street. Like, I think it's the 2nd floor. Mm-hmm. And that one's not used for entrances a lot, I would say, but it is used for exits a lot. That is sort of a common exit for people who don't have access to other sneak out methods, as we call them, other sneaking out opportunities. But this is a way for you to go out of an exit that isn't the media exit, which Grand Avenue generally was considered the media exit, which is where Amber Heard walked out that day. So those are the three main exits. There's also another exit right here, but nobody ever uses that because that just goes out to like some food trucks and Starbucks.
So for staff and jury type?
If you're not going up to the cafeteria in the building. But you can also see these little driveways right here, which are the underground entrances. So there's two driveways. There's one up on Grand up here, right here, and then there's one down on Hill right here. And those go to an underground parking garage.
Did Britney Spears use some of that underground stuff as an example?
This driveway right here connects to an underground garage that actually connects to this garage across the road, which is the Music Center garage. Mm-hmm. And that's what people use for going to the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. That exit was used by Britney Spears during the Free Britney hearings that took place last year. She would go across the street this way to avoid the mayhem, if you will. So, in my experience, and I can't say for certain that this option was available to Amber Heard, but in my experience, generally when there is a swath of media up here on this exit, mm-hmm. you are essentially offered opportunity to use, or are recommended, or are told by your representation, by the courthouse security, that you can use a different exit. You could either go down here, you could go here, or we could let you out underneath the building, and you could have a car waiting for you over here.
So there were opportunities then for someone to keep a lower profile.
Correct, because in my experience, when there is media, the courthouse wants to keep the peace as much as possible. So they will let the high-profile people in their hearings, they're aware. They always are. Like, if I would go in, for example, like if I would go through security at the courthouse with my camera, or if I was standing outside, I almost always had like a courthouse police asking me who I was there for, do you have a press pass, things like that. And you'd have to let them know what courtroom you're going to, so that they're aware of if there is a high-profile person that they need to be concerned about for public safety, right? So it's impossible to assume that Amber wasn't aware of the media on this floor, simply because there were so many people there that even if you're walking out of the building, like let's say you're right here, right? You're walking out of the building, you can see all the media standing right here, right? From inside the building. So at that point, you could just turn around and go out somewhere else. I mean, you don't even have to go out this way once you see them. They'd offer you the opportunity to turn around and go out a different exit.
She had security with her too, right?
Correct. She had her attorney and some security there. I forget. I'd have to look at the video again, but
so they also would know and be responsive enough to say, hey, there's a bunch of people there. We can go another place.
Correct. Yeah, it would be that's their job. And especially with as we saw in the trial, the amount of security that she was, protected with while with Johnny Depp, it leads you to believe that they were pretty on top of their stuff.
Essentially, you were told at the last minute, hey, Amber Heard will be at this courthouse, will be exiting with a bruise on the right side of her face, in
Correct.
enough time to get there and take the footage. And this was a location that she was not forced into using. There were many other options available to her to exit with a lower profile.
Correct. And, it's not uncommon for celebrities to go out this way, but it's only common when they are aware that there is media for a press conference. So, correct.
Well, perfect. And this has been amazing, Jesse, and I want to ask you, what do you think? Do you think Amber, and this is to the audience, do you think that Amber accidentally went out a door with all the paparazzi, all the press, all of everybody there, ready and willing to take a picture of her face? She happened to turn at a perfect angle that Jesse could take the shot. Do you think that was all a coincidence, or do you think it was set up? Please let me know down below. And Jesse, I've got to have you back. We got to do a live stream where some people can ask some questions for you. I hope you're up for it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime you need me, you let me know.
All right, now until then, though, folks, check out his channel, The Front Row. Really good stuff. He's got a nice little public service message thanking the FDA right now because they're saving
thank
us
you for that.
From things that cause cancer and things because the FDA cares. And Jesse's there to report how much they care. Check out his channel. I guarantee you guys will appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eric.